everyone, welcome to the Rock Church podcast. For our episode this week, we wanted to share with you a conversation that we had with a number of folks a part of our church community who also happen to be part of the African Nova Scotian community right here in our province of Nova Scotia. And man, this conversation was so valuable in light of recent events happening in our world. We thought we wanted to share it with our whole church family and beyond. So take some time and enjoy this conversation.
I appreciate you guys coming tonight and being willing to, just to chat and to allow us the opportunity to check in on one another. I wanted to reach out to you guys. I know a number of you had come and been a part of prayer, which was yesterday. Is that true? The days don't mean anything now. 24 hours feels like a week in so many ways. And so I wanted to connect with you guys. I wanted to specifically see how you guys are doing, and because I can only imagine, and I mean only imagine, if I can even imagine, how challenging everything is right now with respect to news and Facebook and Instagram, and maybe even conversations you've had. And so what I'm hoping to do is to just start a little bit of a dialogue, see how you guys are doing, see how, as your pastor, I might be able to help or respond or do something in some way that is a support to you guys. And really, it's a part of me hoping to understand a little better, or at all, not just what's happening in the world, because I don't know if I'll ever understand all of that, because it's too much information too quickly in real time, and it's just so much. But I'm more interested in you guys than I am the world. And I know it sounds terrible, but it's true. You know, I got to start with where I was called and then circle outward. Even Jesus said, start in Jerusalem and just work your way out. And so some of this is where I have to be. And so really, that's what I'm hoping for tonight. And with no agenda, I don't have a list of questions. I don't have a list of anything. But I was hoping it would be of benefit, not just to myself, but to you guys as well, for us to connect. And so I got you now, Brian. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I wanted to speak first. Yeah, first of all, I appreciate very much you holding the meeting because I know I have several cousins and people in my family who've been saved over across the country, and not all the churches in Canada are holding these meetings. So it's out of the ordinary for you and the pastoral team to have done this. And it's appreciated because fundamentally what we have been asking for as a people for quite some time is to be heard, not just to be skipped over and sort of on to the next group, the next immigrant wave that comes in.
Right.
Fine, we want as much of a diversity in the country, but we've got a Black community here in Nova Scotia that's been here as long as the white community has. Mm-hmm. And in my case, West Indian, we've been here for 50, right. 60, 70 years. So I just wanted to just clarify that not all of us are from another part of the world. Matter of fact, in this province, the majority of Blacks are not immigrants. And they're right. Not recent arrivals. They're as indigenous as the whites, not as indigenous as the natives, but they're as indigenous as the whites because they came here with the United Empire loyalists.
Right.
So there's that, has to be that recognition as well. And we're hurting, Pastor. We're hurting. I didn't even realize how much really until today, as I was asked by my supervisor to come into a meeting to just basically. She asked me if everything was okay, and I said yes. I said yes. But then when I came back to my office, a Black colleague, said that she's being advised to retire by her boss because she has severe physical illnesses, and she and I are the only Blacks in this newsroom. And so I just burst out in tears, sobbing, and then we're talked for an hour. And I don't know if you saw my Facebook post, but I mentioned that I've had, been stopped by the police many times in my life, and thought that it was long in the past. But then I'm sobbing with this colleague again about the things that happened as a child when I had just said to my boss a few hours earlier that I was fine. Well, clearly I'm not fine.
Right.
Clearly the trauma of incidents that happened to me in Montreal and Toronto, thank God, not here, but in Canada, are traumatizing to a level that I didn't even realize. And for Black men, I'll speak for us right now. We've all been stopped by the cops.
Right.
Maybe every single one of us have been stopped by the cops at least once. Because, police forces, we don't feel like they're there to serve and protect our community. We feel like they're there to serve and protect the white community.
Right.
And that the enemy is us, even though we pay our taxes just like everybody else. On my case, I'm a Canadian as much as you because I was born in this country.
Right.
I'm Canadian. And so these are the kind of painful things that get dredged up every time a Black man's killed by the police, even if it's in another country. But see, I'm from Montreal. Several Black men have been killed by the police in Montreal. At least, thank God, we haven't had those kind of incidents in Halifax. But in Montreal, George Floyd is really just the latest. It's just another one. I don't know why this one is different, because clearly something has happened that's different in the last 10 days from the litany of other Black men. And I gave my wife a list yesterday of how long the list is just in 3 cities, Montreal, Toronto, and Ottawa. I think there's like 15 Black men who've been shot and killed, including my dad's student in 1987.
Wow.
So these are the kind of traumas that we're carrying within ourselves. And we don't want money. We don't want anything like that. We just want to be recognized that we got pain. And these incidents is like a PTSD. It's like a collective PTSD that comes up. It dredges up the memories. But I hate to say it, Pastor, this isn't the first Black man who's been beaten up and killed on video, okay?
No, that's right.
Maybe for some people it's the first one they've seen. It's not the first one I've seen. Now, granted, I'm in the media. I have to screen most graphic things you folks have ever heard of or can imagine. We have to screen them and basically not run them most of the time because you can't show some of the things we have to see. Who knows how much damage has been done to me from just my career. But put that aside, just when it comes to Black men and how we're treated from the police, this is normal for us. I hate to say it. I'm monopolizing the meeting. I'm sorry.
No. I want to hear. I want to hear. I appreciate it.
No,
Anyone else?
Yeah, when Brian said PTSD, that's exactly what it is. Because my family, we have this weekly meeting that we gather since the COVID started, and we meet on Skype every week. And last week, one of my cousins mentioned that he got pulled over for a traffic violation, and his heart stopped because he didn't know if he was going to survive a traffic violation. That should not be something that you survive. And it's not unrealistic that he felt that way. This constant tension that we live with has almost become normal to us, that it's part of our lives, and that's not right. And it's really because we are being dismissed. One of my colleagues, I was really upset when I first saw the video of George Floyd.
Yeah.
And one of my colleagues I was speaking to her over Skype, and she just said, "Well, you just seem a little different today. What's up?" And I just unloaded on her, and I told her how I was feeling, and she just listened. And honestly, that meant the world to me. And it's just because I knew in that moment it was a human moment, heart to heart, and person to person. We just want to be seen. We just want to be heard. We just want to be treated like humans. And yeah, it is like Brian said. The experience in Nova Scotia may be a little different than Montreal. But I'm not too sure if that's necessarily true. I think it just might be a little more polite in Nova Scotia than it is in Montreal.
It could be. And of course, keep in mind, when you talk about population base, less happens here because there's less people here, just in general. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that the experience is that detached from any area in Canada. It's just that when 10 happen, well, Brian will tell you, it's going to be more newsworthy. 1 or 2, maybe not as much, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't take place. So no, I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Pastor Chris.
Yes, Io.
I am going to echo Brian and say thank you for putting this together and for having us all on this platform. It means a lot to me personally because, again, I needed to go through some form of healing for my soul. I needed to be able to let go some anger that I have developed over the past 2 weeks, and it's not going. I'm angry. I am extremely angry on so many grounds. One of the problems we're facing when we start talking about racism is the fact that most folks think of racism as something that happens between 2 people. So they think of it as, oh, it's something that Pastor Chris has done to me as a Black person.
Right.
Now, if that were to be the true racism that we're talking about, it's the easiest racism to deal with because I can talk to Pastor Chris, I can explain how I'm feeling, and we can shake hands, we can hug, and we can go home and learn from there. But the problem that we're facing is that this thing we're talking about is systemic. And I've had this conversation with a few people, even folks in the church, and they've been dismissive of it to tell me that they don't believe that racism is systemic. So if we don't start from truly understanding that this is ingrained within the system that we find ourselves, we're a long way from finding solution. So that's the very first thing, that what we're talking about now is in every aspect of society: healthcare system, government, education. Education is pretty obvious, there's so many documentation with respect to that, policing, that's another one. The prison system, why is it that we have Black men that are over incarcerated compared to, to other population? So it's all around us. How many folks know that the last segregated school in Canada closed in 1983 here in Nova Scotia? So if we put it in perspective, sometimes when people start saying, oh, we're moving back into the 60s, I'm thinking, are we living in the same world? The world that I'm living in, this is an everyday thing that has not gone away, even though we're in 2020. We're talking here right now. Lillian came home to me and shared a story of what happened to her just today at the hospital. Went out for lunch, trying to get back into the hospital, and somebody was questioning her, like, what are you doing in here? Like, the space did not belong to her. And she had to prove that she's a staff at the hospital here at Cobequid. Pastor Chris. So, and the irony of that is there were other folks that were coming right behind her, white folks, that were not questioned the same way that Lillian was questioned. Now, ask me, why is that different? Why would Lillian be the one that would be questioned as to if she belonged in that space or not? So, it's hurtful. It's hurtful. And like Brian said, the history of Black folks here in Nova Scotia in particular is as old as Nova Scotia. So Nova Scotia, the African Nova Scotian communities of this particular province. This is supposed to be the mecca of Black people. When we're talking about Black people being in Canada, we're surrounded by history. Yet, these are the communities that face, in terms of discrimination, is just unbelievable. We can go on and talk about that. So my point being that we need to start from a place of realizing that what we're talking about, this, I call it evil. This evil that we're talking about is ingrained within the system. And I'm ashamed to say that, and I will say this unapologetically, that this has infiltrated into the church. And that is the painful part for me, because that's supposed to be a place of refuge. And if the church, that is a place of refuge, has now become, for me as a Black person, a place that I become to detest, a place that I'm starting to watch my back because of certain individual that are bought into that oppressive system. It is very, very painful. Very painful. So I'll hold my peace for now and let other folks speak.
Well, I just wanted to say something. I've lived in Sackville all my life. I'm 68 years old, so I've lived here all my life. And I think the difference is that I was brought up in a white community. I wasn't brought up in a Black community. And so I knew about racism as a very young child. For people that thought it wasn't in Sackville, I remember my brother-in-law, Louis, telling me that when he started school, he walked past Middle Sackville School, which is where I attended. When he started school, he had to walk past there and go to a Black school. That was in Middle Sackville. I can tell you many times that I've walked in stores and been followed as soon as I walked in the store. And I can tell you that this is ingrained in my head, that when I go into a store, I'm very careful not to reach into my purse, reach into my pocket, because I don't want them to think I'm stealing. Why is that? I've never stolen in my life, but it's ingrained in my person that I protect myself as a Black person when I go into a store, that I don't want them to think that I put something in my purse, or that I don't want them to think that I've shoved something in my pocket. That's, when you hear that. I have to tell you about something that happened to a young man that works with me. He's a Black guy. And we were doing a clinic in Sackville at the Sackville Legion. Michael is 40 years old. He's got long dreads, but he's a phlebotomist, just like I am. He's working, every day. He went out at supper time in Sackville, in Middle Sackville, to buy something for supper. He got stopped by the police. And he came back and told me that. I said, well, why did they stop you? And he said, no reason. The policeman looked at his license and said, you live in Dartmouth? And Michael said, yes. And he said, what are you doing out here in Sackville? Why are you in Sackville? And Michael said, I'm working. I work here in Sackville. So for people that think that this is not happening in our area, it's still there. And and it does hurt. When I saw what I saw on TV, I had to make myself watch it. But when I saw it, I couldn't believe it was happening in 2020. And even though that's in the States, it hits real close to home. I have 2 Black grandsons. And the other day, Aiden was out playing with some friends and asked his dad to come and pick him up. And Corey said, no, Aiden, you're not that far away. You can walk home. And I said to Corey, you realize that here where we live, Aiden can walk home through a white community right now. He's 15, it worries me, but he is safe to walk home. But if we were in the States right now, Aiden could not walk through a white community by himself and us be sure that he could make it home. So those kind of things concern me, that this is happening. It's very troubling. Yeah.
Thank you, Wendy.
Pastor Chris, I just want to add on to what Wendy's saying. Am I echoing?
A little bit.
Hold on one second.
Try now, Diane. I think you should be good now. Oh.
We lose her?
She just muted herself. Just unmute yourself, Diane.
Hey, can you hear me?
I want to see who's making all the noise is who I want to see.
Try unmuting your phone.
Okay,
Try
can you hear me now?
We can. It's still echoing. I wonder why that's happening.
Yeah. Do you have 2 devices on the go?
Yeah.
Is this good now?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
Oh,
So when the situation with Ahmaud Arbery happened, and he was just going for a walk, and he also lived in a predominantly white neighborhood. I think the next day, like, I wanted to go for a walk, and I just got filled with just like anxiety, because I was just thinking like, man, like, I'm scared. Like, if he just was just going about his life exercising, like, I was scared to go for a walk and just exercise, because I'm like, do people really think like that? Like, are people just really bothered by just me living my life and just working out? Like, it's just like, just the fear that I had. And that's the type of fear that, like, I feel a lot of times, like, say, for example, when the whole pandemic started, and just going to the grocery store and wearing a mask. I'm used to going to places where there's, like, growing up in little towns in Alberta, like southern Alberta, being in like predominantly white, just like neighborhoods, or I guess towns. We've dealt with a lot of racism, and just, I've always had that fear of, like, what Wendy was saying, like, just going to the grocery store, just people always looking at me, and having that, like, PTSD of pretty much like being in the grocery store feeling like everyone's looking at you. But then when the pandemic happened and everyone's wearing masks, even though everyone was kind of looking at each other like, okay, stay away from me, it was worse for me, because it's like, at the same time you're thinking, okay, are they looking at me because I'm Black, or are they trying to stay away from me because they're scared of, like, the virus? And just that type of fear that we have to live with on a daily basis. It's just, it's hard. And I think now, also the fact that I just had a Black son, I think it just took it to another level for me. And I feel like the fear just kind of like increased, and which caused me to be just very overwhelmed lately. Like, I've just been really overwhelmed, really emotional. Me and you talked, you already know how I felt, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi.
Hi.
I don't think we've ever met formally, but I've been attending Rock Church since March 2018.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I just want to say thank you for reaching out, because the truth is, when this happened, the first thing that came to my mind was the church. And I was just like, what is the church even doing about all of this? And I find it even quite surprising that, sorry, my baby's just...
That's okay. Let the baby do what the babies do. We don't care.
Yeah. And I find it surprising when people say, oh, like you said, you're kind of just realizing that you grew up differently from Black people. I find it very interesting, because I feel like people, like, even the white people, the Canadians, let me say the original Canadians, because at the end of the day, we are all immigrants.
Yes.
Like, you must have noticed, and this is not accusing anybody, but maybe of a truth, when something is lost in your perception, you don't see it. But then sometimes I know my colleagues know when I'm treated differently from them. Like, we see it all the time. Even when we go to the store, I know how many times I've been at Walmart, and then when it's time to get out, I'm going through the exit door. Somebody wants to look at my receipt, but then they didn't look at the receipt of the person in front of me who is white, or the person at the back of me who is white,
Right.
So all these things, like, make me wonder when people say, oh, like, I didn't realize that, people are going through this, but this is what we go through. Like, people have mentioned, this is like our everyday life, and it's traumatizing. And the past few days have been more traumatizing for us, because it's more like, okay, you look at your kid. I'm already having that conversation with my 3-year-old about how it's okay for people not to say hello back to you, because he's such a people's person. He always wants to, he wants to reach out. And I see the expression on his face when he tries to say hello, and people are just like, they're genuinely scared of a 3-year-old. Like, how is that a world to live in? how is that a world to live in? Then imagine the anxiety that we feel when we know that he's going to be a man someday in this country if things don't change. Like when we know that he's going to want to hang out with his friends, you know, and he's going to be amongst a group of people, and, you know, maybe he'll be the one picked out if something, like he's going to be, God forbid, but it's almost like he's going to be the default person to be picked out if something wrong goes on, you know. So it's really traumatizing. Like, I don't have anything to tell you about, you know, what the church can really do about it. Like, and I really don't know, but there must be something that, you know, there must be a way that the church can come in. I'm glad that you guys are acknowledging that, okay, this happens. My 3-year-old is here. I'm glad that you guys are acknowledging that this happens, but like, even you may notice that sometimes it's hard for Black people to integrate with, even in the church. And these are some of the reasons why we find it hard to integrate, because sometimes you're constantly being judged, you're constantly being watched for what you don't even know. You know, maybe they watch the way you raise your kids, or you say something, and sometimes you overanalyze what you even want to say, even when you go in gatherings, because, you know, it's just that, like, there's something about the Black man, really, like, it's, I mean, I know people may say, okay, so why did you come to Canada? But nobody should have to live like that anywhere in the world. I have Canadians living in Nigeria. I have US citizens living in Nigeria. We don't treat them like this. And I'm not accusing anybody. I'll say that again, because I know there are I've met a lot of really, really, really nice Canadians. But to be honest, those ones, or those systems that make us feel like we're nothing, you know, they just kind of like make it look like, you know, that's what everybody thinks, you know. And you start, in the last few days, we have had to start second guessing friendships, you know, thinking about who is genuine and who is not. And that's why I'm really grateful that the church, you know, kind of reached out, because if they didn't at this sensitive time, then I'll be wondering if I should be in this church. I just wanted to share that again. I love Rock Church, and I'm glad that you have reached out. But, you know, this is what we really feel. This is how we really feel. We're really hurting. It's getting better. For me personally, it's gotten better, because when I woke up yesterday feeling really down, because all this while I'm like, why are they still taking so much time to put the remaining, to charge the remaining officers? But once they charged them, I just noticed that I felt a lot better. Okay. You know, and so it's getting better. But I really hope that this is the change that we've all been waiting for. Like, I just dream of my son going outside and not having to overwatch him, because I don't know what next is going to happen, you know.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Pastor
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. Is that Karen?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Karen.
The last two, I don't know those last two ladies that were speaking, but, you know, they remind me of, I don't know if anybody saw the mayor of Atlanta, I think it was. And she talked about how she had to teach her sons, and she's got, I guess, 2 boys, and she had to teach them. And once they turned 15, I think she said, and how the fear that she had when they were growing up, how she had to pray over them, and how she had to teach them that the things that you have to do when you're out by yourself, when you're not with somebody to protect you, because they look at those kids when they're 15 that, you know, they could come get shot down, no problem. And when it just hit my heart when she said that she had to teach them what they were to say to the police if the police stopped them, how if the police are following you, call 911. Like, there's a list of rules that these people have to live in. And it just brought back a lot of memories to me, where growing up, I grew up in a white community, and all of my peers and everybody in that community, we were like family. But my father was white and my mother was Black. And I remember going to school, and we would all fight, like the kids on the road that were all white would fight our battles. Like we got called fudge stick every day of our lives. And so we'd be on the bus, and these big kids, bully kids, would bully us. Well, our teachers, we went and we talked to the teachers or the principal about it. I remember going one time, and I guess I got in a fight with one of my peers because they called me out of my name, and it was a lot of racism in that school. And the teacher, the principal, called me down to the office, and I remember crying and saying, but she called me, and I told her what she called me. And so she said to me, and I'll never forget that. She said, well, aren't you? And I just, like somebody that's 7 years old, you know, to say that to them, it was devastating. And that still is with me today. Like that's with me today. And my father and my mother taught us that we'll take care of that. If anybody calls you names, don't fight. We take care of that. Because if you fight, when you come home, you're going to get a beating. So, you know, I remember turning and saying to one of my brother or my sister and saying, Daddy doesn't understand, because see, Daddy was white, so he doesn't walk in our shoes. So he's not visible. So he doesn't understand, but Mommy will understand because she's our color and she knows how it hurts. So a lot of this that's going on in the States is something like it's going on here. It's not as visible here, and there's killings here in Canada just as well as there are in the States. I look at that Inuit girl that got shot, you know, like there's a lot of things happening, and the police are doing a lot of things. Like I'm hearing a lot in the news about these body cameras now, and they don't want to put these body cameras on. Well, why? There's a lot, and I mean, you'd be surprised. Like I even had some of my church friends say to me, oh, well, is there prejudice today? There's no prejudice today. And I said, you know, but my friends, I have a lot of white friends in the church. As you know, I have more white friends than what I do black friends. And I teach them. I teach them because they don't understand. They can't walk in my shoes. They can't understand because they can't understand because you're not walking in my shoes. And there are things that happen. I remember saying something to Pastor Russ one time when we had our bulletins were coming out. And I said, Pastor Russ, I'm going to bring this to your attention, because how would you know? That's the farthest thing from your mind, because you're not of color. I said, Pastor Russ, you know what? If I were first coming to the church, and this would be my first impression, I don't see any people of color on your bulletins. There's none. So I talked to him about that. And he said, you know what? Like he understood, because it was just something that was far from his mind. But coming into a church, and it's supposed to be a multicultural church, you would expect, like when I go into the Superstore or Sobeys, you can count the number of people that are in there of color, that are behind the, you know, that are waiting on you. You can count that. Well, like when I talked to Pastor Russ, because you're going into a safe place when you're going into the church, you want to see diversity. You want to see color in the office. You want to see, you know, you want to see that. And, you know, a lot of people have a big thing about affirmative action and how there are certain spots put aside for people of color. Well, the government thinks that that's going to make things right, because I think it's 10 seats or whatever they have to have for doctors or for fire. Like my nephew is a fireman, and he said, you would not believe the prejudice that he goes through from day to day to day. They used him as a token because it was so much prejudice that they wanted him to go, like he was on Live at 5 or whatever, saying that, you know, they wanted him to just sugarcoat it. But it can't be sugarcoated. It's not just in the fire department, it's in the police department, It's in the Coast Guard. My brother was in the Coast Guard, and he had to leave his job. He had to leave his job because he faced racism every day, every day. And, you know, people thinking that they were better than what he was. And it affected him mentally that he had to leave. He had to leave his job. So he had to be on disability because of that. So it does happen. It's happening in Canada. People think, you know, like I heard some of the prime ministers talking about, oh, well, that's happening in the States and thank God it's not happening here. Well, it is happening here, and we can close our eyes and put blinders on and say it's not happening, but it is, and it's happening every day. Like, you know, people holding high positions will not let the person of color get any further than where they're at if that's where they want to be, because they're not going to come right out and say, well, yes, I'm prejudiced, or you're not going to get any further. But they hold that, and I've seen that happen. So, you know, it just broke my heart when those two ladies spoke before me. It just took me right back to where this lady in the States had so much fear. And I fear for my kids. I fear for my grandkids, because, you know, I have grandsons, and the police have pulled them over several times, like so many times. They pulled them over for no reason at all. One time they pulled one of my grandsons and detained them for so long because he looked like somebody else. And see, that's what they do. They'll just pull you over. If they see somebody black driving a nice car, they're going to pull you over. So those are the things that we face as Black people in this country. We face it. And but one thing on a positive note, Martin Luther King never saw what's happening today. And I am so glad that it was an awful thing that happened to Floyd. But you know what? Martin Luther King never ever seen this happening. Never ever thought that he would ever see this happen, I guess, because now because of what's happening, and people are standing up and protesting and marching and fighting for justice. And finally they did arrest those three men that caused that death. And so, you know, that, and then they gave the guy that killed that man, they charged him with a higher. He needs to be charged with first-degree murder. That's what I believe. But the thing is would we have seen this? It took this man here to make a change, to make a difference. His life wasn't in vain. And his daughter said, my daddy is famous. So now he is, because it's known around the world. So maybe this will change things.
Awesome. Lillian, were you gonna, or Io, did I cut you off at one point?
Yeah, my apologies, Pastor Chris. My mind space. I think I almost referred to you as Pastor Ross for a minute there.
Hey, listen, I'll take any compliment you can give me. Don't sweat it.
Oh my. I think it's quite painful hearing this, and I think the more we're hearing this, we're seeing that when we're talking about racism, you cannot, as a Black person, you cannot escape from it. So it's in every space that you find yourself, just listening to everyone. And the reality that on our end, where I've had to go to school to discuss with the school because my kids have been called the N-word here in Nova Scotia at Cavalier, not once, not twice, not 3 times, the N-word. And to have to sit with the parents, and the parents will say, oh, really? They didn't, maybe they didn't know what they're saying. And I'm expecting more from the parent to say, how can you sit here and trying to defend this kind of attitude? So again, we need to understand that this thing we're talking about, it's just entrenched within the society. And I'm thankful that we're talking about it, and I'm thankful that the church is talking about it, because I feel the church is the hope that we have here. So if the church decide not to do this, we're hopeless.
Mm.
Honestly, we're hopeless.
Mm.
Because this is one place where we have people from every part of the world speaking different languages, coming from every place and coming simply because of one person, because of our Lord Jesus Christ. And it doesn't matter where you go, you do not see that kind of solidarity. So if we have that in the church, that is telling us how our society should function. And if that body doesn't take the issue of racism seriously, I think and I'm sorry to say this, it's kind of like it's a waste of our time, because if we're so quick to jump on other issues, other injustices, if we're talking about child trafficking, we're talking about about people that are abortion and all that, and the church is so good, and I love those. I'm passionate about those myself. I would jump on it. We're so quick, but when we're talking about racism, and the church is a little ambivalent about it. The church is kind of sitting back and saying, maybe it's just a misunderstanding. That's unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. We have no reason to have to sit back when it comes to racism. Are we, is it going to be a difficult conversation? Absolutely. It will make people feel uncomfortable. But you know what? From being uncomfortable, we're going to end up in a better place, because at that point we have better understanding of this thing that we call racism. We have better understanding of when people use the word, privilege, and everybody's sort of just starting to lose their mind that, oh, no, I've worked for everything I've ever owned in my life, not fully understanding that when we say privilege, if you think of yourself as a white person, there are certain things that you will never have to think about. You will never have to think about having what we call the talk with your child. You will never have to think about somebody following you when you're walking through the grocery store. You will never have to think about when you're standing in front of your house in an affluent neighborhood, somebody will pull into your driveway and ask you if you've been hired as a help to work in the garden on that house. And that's your own house. This is me. I moved into this neighborhood. A realtor came on my driveway. I was walking in the yard. He looked at me and he said, "Buddy," and he said to me, "Buddy, can you tell me who the homeowner is?" And I look at it and I said, "Why would you ask me?" Just saying to myself, "Why would you ask me who the homeowner is? And what did I have to do?" I got up from my garden. I said, "Okay, hold on." I walked into my house, shut the door behind me, and I came back and I opened the door and I said, "How can I help you?" He looked at me and he froze and he didn't know what to say. So as a Black person, is he telling me that I'm not fit to live in this kind of neighborhood? So, Pastor Chris, this is the kind of experience that we face every day. And this is something that a white person will never, and I repeat, they will never even have to think about it. They will never have to worry about it, but this is what we worry about. We worry about our children. I'm concerned about them. I'm worried that they're going to walk into the wrong neighborhood. I'm worried that they're going to get pulled by the police. I'm worried that something is going to happen to them. I have to keep praying over them every day. It is tough. And it goes back to the fact that this is entrenched within the system, a very, very, very demonic system that needs to be broken. That is the reality. So we cannot ignore this. We have to keep talking about it. And like I said, many people will feel uncomfortable, but that's okay. Let them feel uncomfortable. From our discomfort, we're going to end up in a better place after we start realizing that our brothers and sisters are suffering in silence. We're getting used to something that we should never be getting used to. That this is not normal. This shouldn't be our norm. We shouldn't accept it. We should be able to move freely. We shouldn't be watching our back for no reason. But that's what we do constantly, every day, as Black people. And then in the end, people will say, we're angry. We're angry for a reason. We're angry because of injustice. We're angry because we feel nobody is listening. We're angry because we feel everyone is turning their back. Angry. So,
Pastor, we're sad.
Thank you, Ayo.
Pastor, we're sad because We know that things can be better, especially if you're talking about it in the church. And I'll say something about the body of Christ. It could be because of these racism things that we're talking about, why I noticed that disproportionately there's more people of color who are Christian. You know, like I'm part of an organization of black journalists. Everybody on our executive is Christian. Everybody on our board is Christian, and we all come from different parts of the country. So there's something about being black. Maybe it's because of the suffering we've had to deal with. It drives us to our knees. It drives us to Jesus. It probably drove the brothers and sisters on the plantation to get on their knees and pray to be liberated from this hell that they were living in. But all I can tell you, Pastor, is that there's more people of color who are going to be coming into the church. So this is another reason why this needs to be dealt with, as we have immigration, or some people don't, including in our church, don't seem to like immigration. Well, guess what? The blacks who live here already have higher birth rates because of abortion in the white community. They have higher birth rates than the community at large. So you're going to get probably more Christians of color in the church, no matter what you do, even if you shut the border down. So this needs to be dealt with, because, you know, in the body of Christ, things are supposed to be different. Things are supposed to be different. We're supposed to love regardless of color, and I'm supposed to love regardless of color. But I'll tell you something, Pastor. There's no aspersions on this great church I'm a part of, but I didn't want to go anywhere near church on last Sunday. I was so furious at what had happened to George Floyd.
Sure.
I made a mistake. We always gather in front of the TV because Rock Church is practically the only thing keeping us connected. And I didn't want to go near the TV on Sunday. So I didn't go. That's wrong. To ask my wife, even before I became a Christian, those last few weeks before I gave my life to Jesus, I was more gung-ho about going to church than she was. This is important for me to go to church every single Sunday. If I miss one service, I'm mad for the whole week and I'm out of sorts. But because of what happened, I was upset. I'm getting off the topic. I'm just trying to say that these issues across the country better be dealt with in the church, because I'm telling you, disproportionately more people are Christian who in the communities of color. So the churches are going to be seeing, for maybe generations, more and more people coming in, and these issues are going to be coming in with us.
Pastor Chris?
Yes.
You've heard many of us speak about our children and the fears that we have specifically for our sons, our Black sons.
Yes.
I have so many stories about my son, and I've had the talk with him over and over again. And he asked me a question that I was unable to answer, and I'm hoping that as a white man, because I think we've been very honest on how we're feeling.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you can answer a question.
Okay.
What is it that the white man fears of the Black man? Why do I need to tell my son that he can't put his hands in his pockets when we're in the store? Why the only person that has ever been taken out of CPL in school in handcuffs for doing something that so many kids have done in that school was my son. Ever. Why? I mean, why? What is the fear?
Boy, that's a great question. I don't know. I can't specifically. I don't know. Let me take it out of here and take it to Africa for a second, where I was. And let me be very clear. I went to Africa 3 months, one spring, summer. And I think for me, my interactions there obviously were very helpful. But for me, when I was the minority in that area, I was obviously noticed more than I'm noticed here. That was really strange for people to actually pay attention to me walking down the street. Like that was, I remember just kept looking behind me thinking like, who is they looking at us? Is that what's happening right now? And so So within that, it made me very aware, oh, I'm different. And different, for whatever reason, is scary. Now, that doesn't make sense in Canada because we have so many cultures. We have so many. And it's just like, because when I see a white person, it probably would echo with what, I don't know if it was Karen who said it, almost like when you go into a store. Oh, no, sorry. I'm getting this mixed up. It's a conversation I had with Ricola, which we're actually going to post on our podcast. Actually, it's out there now. She said, when I walk into a store and I see another black lady, she said, like, we kind of look at each other, we nod, we know what, right? Like, there's an awareness there. And so, because in some way, shape, or form, you know that they know what you are like or what you're thinking in the moment or whatever. And so anything different than that makes people pause. It would make me pause. That sounds ridiculous when you're walking down the street, but when I see a guy walking towards me and it's for right or wrong, it's a white guy, I go, that's a guy probably like me. He could mug me actually pretty easily. He could beat me up pretty easily. But in my mind, that's me walking down the street. Anything different than me does make me look, does make me pause, and I have to do some quick common sense thinking in my mind, going, well, no, that's ridiculous. Why are you thinking like that? Why are you behaving like that? It was just 2 days ago. And of course, now in this environment, everything's a little different and crazier in people's minds, in the sense that because of all the news. Jen and I were walking with our kids, and when we went by, it was garbage day. So everyone, which is not a great day to go for a walk, everyone's bringing out their garbage. Well, in my neighborhood, there was a guy bringing out his garbage with his wife. She happened to be white. He happened to be black. When he came out, I smiled and nodded, and he smiled and nodded. And in my brain, I'm wondering, is he thinking right now that I only smiled and nodded because of all what's happening in the world? Like, you're second guessing and you're doing all this kind of crazy mental gymnastics in your brain, right? But I only thought that because he, just by appearance, looked different than me. And so I don't even know if that answers your question. It does give me pause when I see anyone who's not white, not in a fearful way necessarily, but just like, oh, I'm not sure what that person could be thinking, because I think, and maybe it's because of all that's happening in the news, I might think differently than that person. So I'm wondering, are they happy to see me? Or are they not happy to see me? I wonder what they're thinking about me in this moment. And so that, on a very different level, might be some of what you guys experience just all the time in every situation, if that makes sense. Oof, I don't even know if it made sense.
Yeah, it did make sense. The only big difference is that yes, you analyze it, but you don't have to fear it.
Right.
And we kind of have to live in fear, especially when we have a young black son, a 6'2" black son.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, that's a man. That's a man walking around.
Yeah.
A full-grown man.
Mm.
And so I can understand what you're saying without being able to appreciate how that really feels, if that also makes sense. Yeah.
Yes.
Can I add something, Pastor Chris?
Is that Andreen?
This is Yinka and Rodney.
Oh, shoot, I'm not getting as good with the voices. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Pastor Chris. Thank you, Rock Church, for organizing this. We were so excited when we got the message. You know, it's a really big topic in the world. And like everyone has said, it's a big issue for us. I don't even think everyone can really explain the full extent of it. Well, I want to come at it from a different angle of when we're saying, where did it start from? How can we stop it? It's in everybody's conscious, unconscious, subconscious, where you see those studies where they give little girls dolls, even black girls, they give them dolls white and black dolls, and the black girls pick up black dolls and say the black dolls are evil. So we all believe that black is bad because Baba, black sheep is bad. All God's angels are white, all the devil is black. You denigrate someone, the sub word there is negrate, which is black, so it's bad. But good is white and is pure, and God is white and is pure, and all white things are good. So it goes beyond us having this chat. It's something that we were born into, to know that white is good and black is bad. And of course, we're all Christians, but we know that religion has not helped us in that aspect, where the Bible was used as a tool of slavery. And I wonder if it's because those early slave masters or the first people that came across the black men felt they were less than human. These people are not human. They shouldn't be loved as human. They shouldn't be treated as a human like me. They are less than me. They're less clever than me. They're probably only good for brute force. They've got power and strength. So I will use them on the farm. And because they've got this power, they will kill me. They will overpower me. And subconsciously, this message gets spread to every generation of black and white people, because there are still studies saying when you put a black man in front of a black man, he is more scared of the black man than he is of the white man. It's something that we just have learned. So now we're here. How do we move forward? What can we do? We've got thousands of years of this history. How do we move forward? How do we change it? We know what it is. The world's hurting. I've got a teenage son as well. I'm worried about him. And I've got a few suggestions, and I would really like us to, if we can concentrate more on how to heal and how to move forward. And one of the suggestions is something like the narrative, the black narrative. Does the church celebrate black people enough? Or are the messages we're putting out there about hungry children in Africa, is that all we ever talk about? Do we have videos of the African church dancing? You know, the African church is really known for their music and dance and the joy. Do we put that? Do we show that when we talk about the African church? Or is it always about let's send money and donate, which is fine, but those things seeps into our soul, and that's how we would always interpret it. Or in our church, are there things that we can pull the black person into and say, okay, you might feel awkward, you might not feel like you belong, but you really do belong. Can you man the coffee this week? Just because we're not hearing your voice. We don't know why we're not hearing your voice. So, but we want to hear your voice. And soon enough, you feel loved. You feel like you belong. I'm sure like there are many more ideas that will come through my mind, and I'm sure all of us have got great ideas, but I feel so blessed to be part of Rock Church and this conversation, but something needs to change. And we need to move forward. And the only way to heal is by moving forward.
Very good. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Oh, I don't know who that is, but I want to hear from you if you have a little baby.
Well, I already spoke.
Okay.
But just to add to, since we're moving towards suggestions, I think one of the big things is the economic issues, because just like sorry, I'm not sure if it's Deacon Ayo or Pastor Ayo, I don't know what the title is, but just like you said, why would you think
he answers to both? You go for it.
Okay, so why would somebody think that that is not his house? You know, why would you go to somebody's driveway and then see them in the garden and think that, you know, this can be his house? At best, he must be the gardener, you know. It's because of the perception, and that's what the lady before me was saying. It's the perception that people have that black people, because maybe there are some projects areas that are filled up with black people, a black person, it has to be poor, right? They shouldn't be able to afford this, they shouldn't be able to afford that. And even if you go back from history, especially American history, Black people have never really had a chance, to compete with, they can't, their schools are not, up to the standard that it should be. Some of them have to be dropouts because they couldn't afford fees. So the church has so many projects that it contributes to. So how about setting up like some kind of fund for like in Nova Scotia, for especially the Black Nova Scotians that cannot afford to go to school, maybe to university? What about scholarships? It's about giving the Black man opportunities to advance as well, right? So that when people in 10 years, in 20 years, when people see them, they know that, okay, these people have gone to school. Some of us were part of, this project, and people can stop looking. And sometimes it's understandable because you see people, like a Black man is walking and there's a white couple, and all of a sudden the man feels the need to hold his wife or his girlfriend as if the Black man is about to attack her. Or a Black man is walking and a white man is walking and he feels the need to hold on to his wallet, because there's a perception that Black people are just, criminals. They are the ones always stealing, and sometimes it's just the way the media portrays it. It's not necessarily true. I've seen all sorts of people commit crimes, white, Black, Hispanic, any race. It's just crimes are motivated by what people are going through most of the time, right? So those are the things. Maybe that is something that the church can look into. Maybe we should start, instead of just talking about it is a great step, but maybe we should start, trying to help.
No, thank you. Yeah. Oh, I love the babies so much. That's the one. Oh man, I miss so much about church, but that's one of the things that's just crushing me. I miss seeing everyone's kids.
Hi, everybody. My name is Carl.
Hey, Carl.
Hi. I'm the type of person that I sit back and I usually don't say a lot of things, and I usually process. I do a lot of processing. So over the last number of days, that's what I've done is doing a lot of processing. It's I don't know where this is going to get us now. I guess a couple of things that really go into my mind is that, why did it have to come to this point for people to really sit back and look at what's really going on in this world, especially when it comes to racism. When COVID-19 started, I remember going for walks and of course we had to keep our distance. So there's times that I would actually walk on the road so people can pass me on the sidewalk. And then I'm like thinking to myself, do they realize or do they understand this is what we went through years and years and years ago? We had to walk either on the other side of the street, or we had to use a different bathroom, or, things like this has happened. And do they understand? Now when I look at this, I sit back and I say to myself, how are people going to act now? Are they going to, are they going to feel sorry for us, or are they really want to sit back and get educated, which I think is the key thing. Education is always key, no matter what happens, and that's what needs to happen, is that everybody needs to be educated. Lately, what I've been doing is I'm looking for an apartment, and so a lot of times when I speak to people on the phone, and I tell them, I say, you know what, I'm a good guy. I say I'm not dirty. I'm not, stuff like that. Then of course the thing comes in my mouth is I also say that I'm a Christian, and then when I sit back and think about when I say that afterwards, it's like, is that going to really make a difference? Or, and then when I finally meet these people, they look at me, and because I'm Black, are they going to sit back and say, well, no, he's Black, I don't want to bring this person into my house, or, or let this person have this apartment. So, when everybody else is talking about, what it's like to be looked at differently, criticized, everything, it's just, to me, it's just not right. And it's unfortunate that we have to get to this point to finally people to open up their eyes to see. My sister was the Black Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia, May Ann Francis, and she also had dealt with racism as well. And so people, it doesn't matter even what kind of authority that you're in, you're going to be discriminated no matter what happens. But I think that it's unfortunate that we have to go through this again. That the eyes have to be opened up wide to see what's going on. To me, when we look at Jesus, our Lord and Savior, He died on the cross for our sins to be forgiven. He wants us to love, and that's one of the things He wanted us to do in this world, was to love one another. But I think there's times that we fall short of that. But where do we go next? What has to happen next? Like I said, does it have to be the education that has to be brought up and for people to see and understand what we're really going through? I also work for the school board as well, and my last year was my in 2018 was my first time working for the school board. And I remember an incident in the classroom where we were actually doing it's kind of a bingo game with the kids. And one of the questions that were asked was, who eats bananas? And of course the answer is a monkey. And one of my coworkers says, Carl eats bananas. Carl eats bananas. And he kept on going on about Carl eating bananas. So anyway, so at this point, I'm sitting back thinking to myself, okay, this guy needs to stop. That's the first thing. But then what do I do next? Should I go to my boss and say, this is what's going on? And for that moment, I actually sat there and didn't say anything, because me being working for the school board and just starting, I'm thinking, okay, what's going to happen? Are they going to sit back and say, okay, he's starting something, let's not rehire him, or let's find a way to get rid of him, or whatever? But then it was actually one of my learning room teachers that basically spoke up and went to my boss and said, this is what has happened. So I left on a Friday, and then Monday morning I was called into the office with my boss, and basically she said, I heard what has happened. I'm so sorry I didn't reach out to you on Friday. And I can't imagine what you're going through. But then as the process went on, nothing was done. Like, I was brought into the principal's office. He sat down and spoke with me and said, this is what's going on. But after that, nothing happened. Like, there was no follow-up, no nothing. And it was like, why? I don't understand this. Why do I have to go through this? I shouldn't have to go through this. Not one bit. So, and like I said, unfortunately, because of the situation that has happened over the last number of days, we have to look at this and say, it's about time that somebody or some situation has to happen that we're finally listened to, or that people, like I said, open up their eyes to see what's really going on. My only concern now too as well is that if white people are going to look at us and like, again, feel sorry for us, then they're missing the point. Don't feel sorry for me. Understand me. Ask me questions. Look at me. Look at my heart. What I have to offer. Look at me that way. So it's important that, like I said, change has to be made. It has to be done now. When I listened to news today about the Premier of Quebec saying that there's no racism at all, I'm like sitting back saying, like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? So it's the old saying, when you have to walk in our footsteps or walk in our shoes to really understand what it feels like, because we can tell you our stories, but then it's stories. It's stories that hurt us. It's stories that people just would never understand. So I think that, like I said, the big thing right now is people need to be educated to learn, to understand, and be able to, from the heart, really look at us differently than looking at us and being scared of us because, I'm walking in the store or I'm walking by somebody, and like somebody said earlier, hanging onto the wallet or hanging onto the purse, or, stuff like that should not be happening. But unfortunately, it does, and it needs to be changed. And like Dwayne and everybody else said as well, I thank you so much for for bringing us all together this evening to be able to talk about this, because this is important, and racism exists all over. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're going to church. Doesn't matter if you're going to the grocery store. It doesn't matter where you work. It's just, it happens. It's all over. And until people speak up and say, let the voice be heard, then nothing's going to happen.
Right. No, thank you, Carl. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
James.
No, I just wanted to say, Pina, if you want to talk, you better talk, because I'm going to talk after you.
Okay. No, I just wanted to say that thank you so much, Pastor Chris, and I see Spencer is here as well. I really, really appreciate this. And I'm saying this because I was losing hope. I don't want to be political in any shape or form, but I did lose hope when I saw a lot of what was considered, or those people who were supporting Trump were considered evangelicals. And in my heart, I felt, can somebody just stand and say something? Yes, there are some good that Mr. Trump is doing, but there are some good that he needs to be addressed and needs to be questioned. And when I saw that it was the evangelicals, meaning the church, that were supporting him and that didn't say much, I was really, really heartbroken. But the sheer fact that Pastor Chris, you are coming up to us and reaching out to us, is giving me a lot of courage. Not only just courage in being Black, but also is giving me strength, and it's giving me like more of reality of who Christ is. It's taking me back to who God has created us for and what Christianity is all about. Because this is Christianity. We need to sit down and talk, and we are all made in the image of God.
Right.
And this, and looking at the Bible, this is not the first time we are dealing with this. When you look at the book of Acts, they had situations where there were a certain group of people of different descent, and they had to deal with it. And this is a platform, this is a good start for us, I think, for us to sit down and say, yes, we are not the same. We would like to think that we are the same. We are not. Even us Black people, we are from different countries. I'm from Botswana. Other people here are from different countries in Africa, and some are here are from Nova Scotia. We are from different areas, and we have Jamaicans as well. So we need to sit down and look at our differences and see how we can come together as the body of Christ. I believe, I'm hopeful when I see the body of Christ standing up and raising up their armor and marching forward. I'm truly, truly hopeful to see that.
That's awesome.
That's all what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I think to start, I think we should give a definition to racism, because when we say to someone that they're racist or there's racism in the system, I think systemic racism would be for non-whites. They have the advantages. There's some privilege that they don't have just because they're Black. So there's some not privilege that they don't have because to be Black, it's in a way it's a headache, because we need to prove that what we're doing or what we have truly belongs to us. Or we need to prove that we're not guilty, when this justice system is to prove that they need to prove that we're guilty. So technically what happened in the United States was so frustrating, because there's a video about 4 people killing a Black man, even though there's an autopsy. So they had to prove that it's really these 4 people that killed the Black man. And it's not proving that. So and what's sad is that after a week of destruction, that's when they decide to accuse the 4 people. And we all think about it, that if it was a bunch of black men doing it to a white person, it wouldn't have taken 30 minutes for them to be in charge. There's been riots for hockey. There's been riots for schooling. There's been riots for sports, and no one is complaining. No one is saying that it's bad. No, everyone's fighting it normal. But because there's a riot, because a black man is dying, now people are saying, okay, how come they're destroying businesses? How come they're doing this? How come they're doing that? But now it's
Amen.
Amen. People would shout for if someone kill a dog, kill a cat, kill seals, kill any animals. But because it's a black man dying, and now there's a riot, and now everyone is screaming, "Oh my gosh, I lost my livelihood. I lost this. I lost that." But there's someone that died, and no one cares.
Amen.
And what's sad is that I feel that even in the church, people are not concerned about it. Because it's sad that in 2020 we're supposed to be brothers and sisters in Christ, but I've heard in the church, so I foster kids, and I've heard foster parents in the church saying, if the social services tell me that the person is from North Preston, I'm not gonna take him. That's a Christian saying that. Someone that's supposed to have the love of God. And what's sad is that even people I feel it wouldn't surprise me that a lot of people in the church have never been in North Preston. They would feel safer in Iraq than North Preston or any black community in Nova Scotia. So I think we're at the point that the church needs to realize that there's a verse saying that if you know what's good and you're not doing it, you're sinning. It's saying, giving yourself a bunch of excuses. I didn't know. How come it's happening? I think it's sad that in church, it's that black people are being harassed. It's not supposed to be a surprise, but now because it's filmed, now you believe it. What changed? Nothing changed. So we've been saying it, but now a bunch of people films it, and now it's true. Okay, oh my gosh, it's truly happening. And now there's some kind of riot, and then people don't understand why there's a riot. So for solutions, I think we'll have to, I think I lost hope for the old generation. I'm not gonna waste time with them, but I think for the next generation, I think we'll have to, I don't know, Spencer, with the kids, go to North Preston or Ammons Plain or any black community, and we'll have to do some partnership and start to do some talking. Yeah.
Okay. Well, don't give up on us old guys just yet.
Okay.
I'm older than you think, James. Come on, man. Come on.
I'm older than you, Pastor. Careful.
No, are you?
Careful. Yeah. But Pastor, I'm 47. But I can't even, I'm just going to piggyback off what my man was saying about the different perceptions of violence, the hockey riots.
Right.
You can prove racism just by being a sports fan. Look at how different fighting is perceived by the media and society in NASCAR, baseball, and the NHL compared to how fighting is perceived in the NBA and the NFL. Two totally different ways of covering it. These NASCAR guys will smash each other off the track, then they'll get out and start hitting each other with their helmets. We know about hockey. I don't have to go there with hockey. Baseball, they're punching, kicking, throwing balls at each other. No big deal. But when there was a riot in the Palace at Auburn Hills in Detroit, called the Malice in the Palace. They even gave it a name.
Yeah.
And it was the worst thing that had ever happened. Right? When the guy took his helmet off and smashed the quarterback of the Steelers in his head last season, worst thing he could have ever done. Should be banned from football. I'm like, hey, then ban all those hockey players. So I can't even watch sports without seeing racism, Pastor. That's a fact.
Well, even in adoption, believe it or not, That picture on the screen is my beautiful daughter, who
Yes.
she is biracial, but she does look white. When she was a little baby, I would take her to the park like mothers do, and people would insist that I was her nanny. I am very certain if it was a white woman with a black child, that would not have been the perception. They would have been honored. Oh, you adopted a black child. And when I would explain, no, this is my daughter, they would actually question me about it. Where did you get her? Well, in Montreal. Really? It's just, yeah.
I got her at the kids store where you get all the kids. Where did I get her?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Andreen.
Right. Yeah, so I believe one of the solutions forward is that we have to have the conversations. And like everyone said, thank you very much for doing this forum so we can actually air our voices. But I believe the conversation needs to be had among, even whites in the church, among their families as well, exactly where they stand on certain things too. For example, somebody used an example, like, is it okay if one of their children marry a black kid? How do they really feel about that, and embracing them into their family, right? And it's also the narrative of saying, okay, this happened to the black person because they did this. Oh, if they did not resist, this wouldn't happen. A white man can resist and it's okay. But when they say, if the person did not do this, so there's an attitude of justification when stuff are done and to excuse it away. So some of that is a narrative that needs to be changed for us to move forward. And people have to be challenged on that.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you. Anyone else? Well, I tell you what, no, go ahead.
That's okay, Pastor Chris. It's kind of refreshing for me. And
Latoya.
I would say thank you very much for actually arranging this. It's very refreshing for me to actually hear everyone else, because Andreen and I are from Jamaica and we're predominantly a Black society. So most of the things that actually happen to Canadian Blacks and American Blacks wouldn't have actually happened to us. So it's
in Jamaica, you mean?
Yes, in Jamaica.
Yeah.
We experience classism, not necessarily racism, because the society is mainly Black. It's not so much, white. You do have white Jamaicans, but it's predominantly Black. So the experiences that happens to American Black and Canadian Black and other Black persons in a mixed society, it's a little bit different for us. So we experience it a little bit different. I never really experienced racism until we started traveling outside of Jamaica. And even then, for me personally, I process it a little bit different, because there's a lot of things. And what happened this week actually makes me take a step back and say, okay, was this person being racist to me? Because to be honest, I really don't. If someone does something, I don't think of it as being racist or anything. I would just brush it off and move on. Because one of the things that we have always been raised to do in the Caribbean, because as a female in the Caribbean, where you have predominantly a lot of male, and male are the dominant one, as a female, and from also with female, we're brought up a little bit different. You have to be strong and you have to speak up for yourself. So we're not afraid to actually speak up for yourself. So if someone approaches me and I'm not very happy with it, I'll tend to actually, confront it. So it's a little bit different here. So if someone actually approaches me and I think they're being racist, then I'm not afraid to actually approach it. But I never really look at certain situation as being racist until this. I had to take a step back. What's happening in America, I had to take a step back and look at situations that happened to me over here. And I'm like, oh, maybe that person was being racist. Maybe that person was following me because, I'm Black. You're following me. I would be like, oh, no, I'm okay. You don't have to follow me. And I never really thought about it. Funnily enough, I never really thought about it as someone, following me because I'm Black or because my skin color, or they're looking at me differently because I'm Black or anything like that. So it really made me take a step back and be more aware of the situations around me unlike before, I would just go about my merry little way, being blinded to certain things. So in a way, that's what happened to me this week. It made me really reassess, what's happening in the society, and, what's happening to, like, from a society that, you have all the different ism, but racism was not really one of the things that was predominant. So that's just what this week taught me.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that. And that's what I appreciate about Jamaicans. You always know where you stand. I kind of love that. I love that. I like it.
Pastor
Never have
Chris,
to
I
guess.
just want to piggyback on Latoya. It's right with the experience. She's right with the experiences. Because for me, for example, I was born in Ivory Coast, West Africa, and I left when I was 8 years old, and I moved to the States, and I lived in the States for 5 years. So what she was saying about when you're in a predominantly Black, like when you live in Africa, obviously, like you have issues like ethnical issues, like it's like this tribe versus that tribe type of thing. And then when I moved to the States, I experienced racism. Actually, like I started experiencing it more from like the Black versus white thing. But the funny thing too, not funny, but the interesting thing was because I was African, and when I moved to the States, I lived in Detroit, and it was a predominantly Black American city. When I was going to school, I was also getting like hate for being African, right? And then when I moved to Canada and I lived in southern Alberta in like a small town called Brooks, I experienced like blatant racism, like it was just on another level. So yeah, like depending on where you live, you have like different experiences with when it comes to like racism. So yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you. You guys, I really appreciate this. Yeah. What I'd like to do, a couple things. I'd like to meet again as you're able. I'd like to do it next week at this time and keep talking. Here's one thing I know. I'll choke up. It's late now, so you're going to get... When I choke up before, that's me controlled. So now you get the late version of me, which is going to be a nice hot mess. We can't... This group is not going to change... I'm not going to say we're not going to change the world, because we are, but we're not going to see it immediately. Jesus changed the world with 12. I'm counting Paul in there. And there's double that on the screen. So there's lots of hope for what we're able to do. But I think what we're really able to do is to help our church family understand your experience more than they do now. And so with your permission, I'd love to podcast this and to share it, only with your permission. If someone wants to opt out of that, you can let me know. Just email me, and we could even edit your portion out if you choose to. And I respect that because that's not what you signed up for. This was to talk to me. But I would like to talk with you guys again, and to see how we can be maybe creative a little bit and help one another and believe with one another and help me as best as I can to bear your burdens a little. I don't know how to do that, really, but I want to, okay? And so talking and being with you guys is only gonna help. So I offer that, and we'll send you guys out another Zoom link. Please help me by reaching out to those in our congregation whom I may miss. And so I said this to Diane the other day, like our database records a lot of things, but skin color is not one of them. And so we sent it to everyone we could think of, but undoubtedly we are missing someone in the mix of this. The other thing that you could help me with is too, and we don't need to talk about it tonight necessarily, but how we have approached our best way, and I'm going to say myself, forget the grand we, how I've approached and kind of developed what I thought was a best practice as to not engage in racism, I'll say, is to I basically not think about it in this. I wouldn't pick someone to do something because they were African Nova Scotian or they were Asian or nor would I exclude them. But within that, I may have missed opportunities to celebrate the fact that we're more diverse than we are, which, like Karen, was it Karen? Yeah, Karen, talking about the bulletin. Because we don't think like that, and I'm going to say and when I say we, I mean the staff, we don't think like that in general. We sometimes miss opportunities to help people have a fuller experience, perhaps, here at the church, because it doesn't occur to me that it would feel really good if the person that served you coffee, and please, Lord, let there be an opportunity for us to serve someone an actual cup of coffee as we gather together again someday. But it might feel better seeing someone of your own skin color serve you that cup of coffee on an occasion. And maybe in that way, we've offered things to people, and I'm only using coffee as an example, and everyone has the opportunity to sign up or to do or to whatever. But maybe in some ways, I've missed opportunities to have someone of African Nova Scotian descent preach at the church. Because, and full disclosure, we're just going to start pretty well a month of special speakers. They're all white guys. Why? Those are the guys I know, right? And I could not ask Pastor Lennett because he's up to his eyeballs with everything he's doing. And, right, but because we all grew up here together, in part, I know we're all from different areas as far as, like, there's lots of you that are first generation Canadians, and I get that. But because we all grew up together, I don't think of it the same way as I think of those that have just arrived, and like we have a Brazilian community. Well, I'm thinking, how do I reach the Brazilian community because they just got here, right? With thinking that we're all having this same experience. We've all grown up in the same area. We're all being exposed to the same things, which is actually not true. So with that in mind, and with your grace and help, maybe you could help me with some of those things. How could this be a fuller and richer experience for everyone who comes to church here, not the least of which be our African Nova Scotian community? Does that make sense with what I'm asking for? Is that a fair thing to even say?
I think it's very fair, because although I haven't focused on racism in the church, and things AO has said tonight are going to make me think about those things. Sorry, Io, I got you. I say AO.
That's okay.
Io, when I first came to this church, Io being in the parking lot, Io coming up to our family and shaking our hand and being the first person to greet us was extremely impactful, and helped us make the decision to become members of the church, because we saw a brother who was gentle, and a brother who was showing the love of Christ, and a brother who was part of the church leadership and community.
Mm-hmm.
That's a factor for me, you know?
Sure.
So you can literally lose people if they come and don't see Black people in positions like that on the board and in the leadership and all the rest of it.
Yeah. No, and that's absolutely absolutely fair. Absolutely fair. I appreciate that.
I'm ready to preach.
Where was that, Carl?
Yep.
Carl, speaking of preach, so here's the deal.
Yeah.
Next week, Carl and I had a great conversation that I recorded on Zoom. He has a really cool testimony. We're actually going to share that on our Facebook page next week. So you get a little sample of Carl too, but I appreciate that, buddy. That's awesome. You're awesome.
Thanks.
That's great.
Carl's the best.
Yeah, Carl's a good man. Yeah. Well, I'd like to just read a little blessing over us before we go. And I thank you for, I really, really thank you for your time, and I really want to do it again. So this is from Ephesians. It's a set of scripture you know very, very well. Ephesians chapter 4, the Apostle Paul speaking. I, therefore, a prisoner for serving the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of your calling, for you have been called by God. Be always humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love. Make every effort to keep yourselves united in the Spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. For there is one body and one Spirit, just as you've been called to one glorious hope for the future. There is one God, one faith, one baptism, and one God and Father, who is over all and in all and living through all of you. And because of that, I have great hope for the future he's calling us to be a part of together as the Rock Church family. And so I bless you guys tonight, and I thank you so very much for your time. And if at any point you guys need to chat individually, you just like to have a conversation or something comes up, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm actually here most days, and if not, I'm actually pretty easy to find. And so, we'll find each other in this. Okay.